What if the reason you cannot sleep tonight is not only that you are afraid something will go wrong, but that somewhere deep inside you believe everything depends on you staying awake? The room is dark except for the blue light of a digital clock. 2:17 a.m. The rain has been tapping against the window for nearly an hour, soft at first, then harder, then soft again. On the bedside table, a phone lies face up. Its screen is black, but Daniel keeps reaching toward it as though another message might appear, simply because he needs one. He checks the time. He checks the battery. He checks the last conversation. Nothing has changed. Across the hallway, his daughter is asleep. At least, he hopes she is. Earlier that evening, she had gone to bed with a fever. The doctor had said to watch her, keep her hydrated, and call if the symptoms became worse. Nothing about the situation was extraordinary. Children become sick, fevers rise and fall, parents wait. Yet when the house grew quiet, Daniel's mind became loud. What if the fever rises while he's sleeping? What if he misses a warning sign? What if the doctor overlooked something? What if the phone rings with more bad news from the office? What if the savings run out before he finds another job? What if this one small night is only the beginning of everything falling apart? Fear rarely enters the room carrying only one concern. It arrives with a whole procession. One worry opens the door for another, and another, until the mind is crowded with futures that have not happened. At midnight, a child's fever can become a picture of loss. A delayed reply can become rejection. An unpaid bill can become homelessness. A mistake can become a permanent identity. A silent prayer can become evidence that God has turned away. Daniel sits on the edge of the bed and listens. The rain pop, the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, pop, a car passing on the wet street, pop, his daughter turning beneath her blanket, pop, his own breathing, pop, shallow and uneven, pop. He wants to pray, but prayer feels difficult when the mind is racing. Pop. He knows the words people say in moments like this. Trust God, give him your worries, be still. He has said those words to others. He has meant them. But tonight they feel like instructions written for someone stronger. So he does what tired people often do. He reaches for his phone again, hoping information will give him control. He searches the same symptoms he searched an hour earlier. He reads the same warnings. He compares numbers. He scrolls through stories written by strangers. For a few minutes, the act of searching gives him the illusion that he is doing something useful. Then the fear returns, larger than before. There is a particular loneliness in being awake while the people you love are sleeping. The house becomes a small world, and you become its only watchman. Every sound feels like a responsibility. Every silence feels suspicious. Closing your eyes feels careless. Daniel does not say it aloud, but the belief beneath his anxiety is simple. If I stop watching, no one will be watching. Long before electric clocks, glowing screens, weather reports, and late-night searches, another traveler knew the weight of uncertainty. Imagine an ancient road climbing through the hills of Judah. The sun has already disappeared behind the ridges. The last light rests on the stones like fading gold. A small group of pilgrims has stopped before beginning the next stage of their journey toward Jerusalem. Some have traveled for days. A few carry children. Others carry sacks of food, rolled blankets, clay containers, and the quiet burdens that cannot be tied to a pack. Among them is a man we will call Eliab. Scripture does not give us his name. He is not a biblical hero. He is simply an imagined traveler, one of the countless ordinary worshippers who may have sung the songs of ascents as they journeyed upward toward the city of God. Eliab stands apart from the others for a moment, looking toward the darkening hills. By daylight, the hills can be beautiful. Their slopes catch the sun, their paths lead toward Jerusalem. They rise like ancient witnesses beneath the open sky, but as evening comes, beauty and danger begin to share the same shape. The road narrows between rocks, shadows fill the ravines, a traveler cannot see who may be waiting beyond the next turn. A loose stone can twist an ankle, a sudden storm can make the path almost impossible. The destination is holy, but the road is not harmless. Eliab has made journeys before. He knows how to fasten a sandal, ration water, read the sky, and follow the marks left by earlier travelers. He is not helpless. Yet experience has also taught him that knowledge cannot remove uncertainty. A prepared traveler can still stumble. A careful family can still meet trouble. A strong person can still become tired. Behind him, voices soften as the group settles for the night. A mother calls her child closer. An old man lowers himself slowly beside a stone. Someone breaks bread. Someone else checks a small oil lamp. The ordinary sounds of travel drift through the cooling air. Eliab keeps looking upward. The opening words of Psalm 121 are often heard in peaceful places. They are printed on cards, spoken at funerals, read beside hospital beds, whispered before journeys, and remembered during sleepless nights. But before they became familiar words, they were the words of someone looking at a road he could not control. I lift my eyes to the hills. It is a simple movement. The head rises. The eyes move away from the ground. The traveler looks toward what lies ahead. But what does he see? Some readers hear confidence in the line, as though the hills themselves are a picture of God's strength. Others hear tension, because the hills may also represent the dangerous places through which the traveler must pass. Perhaps both feelings belong there. The hills are where the journey continues. They are also where the traveler's control ends. Eliab looks at them and asks the question hidden inside every human fear. Where will my help come from? Not, will I need help? The traveler already knows he will. The question is where that help will be found. That distinction matters. Many of us spend years trying to avoid the first admission. We tell ourselves that we should be stronger, calmer, more organized, more spiritual, or more prepared. We imagine that mature faith means never feeling overwhelmed. We treat need as failure. But Psalm 121 begins with need. It begins with a person who does not pretend the hills are small. It begins with someone who looks directly at the road and recognizes that human strength will not be enough for every part of it. Daniel does not know that an ancient pilgrim asked the same question. He only knows that at 2:31 in the morning, his own strength feels painfully limited. He walks down the hallway and opens his daughter's door. A nightlight casts a pale circle against the wall. Her hair is spread across the pillow. One hand rests near her face. He crosses the room quietly and touches her forehead. Warm, still warm. He checks the thermometer again. The number is not dangerous, but fear does not always listen to numbers. For a few seconds, he watches her breathe. Parents learn to recognize the rhythm of a sleeping child. The rise, the pause, the fall. When anxiety is present, even normal breathing can seem too quiet. Daniel counts each breath, then loses count, then begins again. He remembers another night, years earlier, when he stood beside a hospital bed and prayed for his wife Danda. He remembers the sound of rubber soles in a corridor, the smell of antiseptic, the way fluorescent lights made every face look tired. The outcome had been good, but his body remembers the fear more clearly than the relief. Old fear has a way of entering new rooms without knocking. He draws the blanket higher around his daughter's shoulders and returns to the hallway. On a shelf near the stairs is a Bible his mother gave him when he was younger. He has not opened it in weeks. This is not because he has stopped believing. It is because disappointment has made belief feel complicated. Several months earlier, the company where he worked had reduced its staff. He had walked into an ordinary meeting carrying a notebook and left carrying a cardboard box. Since then, he had sent applications, attended interviews, rewritten his resume, and learned the strange exhaustion of waiting for strangers to decide whether his experience still had value. He had prayed before every interview. Some had gone well. Some had ended with polite silence. One position seemed almost certain until the final email arrived. "We have decided to move forward with another candidate." Daniel did not stop believing in God, but he began to wonder what God's help was supposed to look like. Was help a door opening? Was help money arriving before the account became empty? Was help a fever disappearing before morning? Was help an answer that could be measured? And if none of those things happened immediately, did that mean help had not come? He takes the Bible from the shelf and carries it to the kitchen. The cover is worn at the corners. Inside, his mother's handwriting appears beside certain passages. A line beneath a promise, a date beside a prayer, a small question mark where she must have struggled to understand. Daniel places the Bible on the table but does not open it yet. Outside, the rain continues. There are nights when faith does not begin with certainty. It begins with sitting down. It begins with bringing the fear into the same room as the words of God. It begins with refusing to run from the question, even when the answer has not yet become clear. Eliab, beneath the ancient sky, asks, "Where does my help come from?" Daniel, beneath the kitchen light, asks the same question without speaking. Perhaps you have asked it too. You may have asked it while waiting for test results. You may have asked it after someone left. You may have asked it in a car parked outside your own home because you needed a few more minutes before walking inside. You may have asked it while caring for a parent whose memory was fading, while holding a bill you could not pay, while lying beside someone you loved and wondering why the distance between you felt so great. You may have asked it after praying for the same thing so many times that the prayer itself became tiring. Where will my help come from? The world offers many answers. Work harder, plan better, distract yourself, stay informed, control every possible outcome, make sure no one sees your fear, build enough security that you will never need anyone. Keep moving so you do not have to feel what hurts. Some of those actions have value. Planning can be wise. Information can protect. Work can be honorable. Responsibility is not the enemy of faith, but none of them can carry the full weight of a human life. No amount of planning can remove every surprise. No amount of money can purchase immortality. No amount of information can make the future completely visible. No amount of strength can keep the people we love from every form of pain. Sooner or later, every person reaches a hill that cannot be crossed by self-reliance alone. That moment can feel like failure. In the language of Psalm 121, it may be the beginning of wisdom. Daniel opens the Bible. The pages fall near the Psalms. He turns slowly, passing words he recognizes and words he has forgotten. Then he sees the heading, A Song of Ascents. He has read Psalm 121 before, many times. At least, he believes he has. Familiar words can become invisible. We stop hearing them because we think we already know what they say. His eyes move across the first line. He imagines the hills. Not peaceful green mountains in a framed picture, real hills. Uneven roads, heat during the day, cold at night. A traveler carrying what he can and leaving the rest beyond his control. He reads the question, where does my help come from? Then the answer arrives. Not as a vague feeling, not as confidence in the traveler, and not as trust in the hills. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Daniel pauses. The words are so large that they almost seem disconnected from his small kitchen. Maker of heaven and earth, the one who shaped oceans, mountains, stars, soil, breath, time, and the mysterious life of a child sleeping down the hallway. Yet this great declaration is not offered as a lesson in abstract theology. It answers a frightened traveler's personal question. My help, not only the help of kings, priests, prophets, or people with stronger faith, my help comes from the Lord. There is something startling in the movement of the psalm. The eyes begin with the hills, but the answer rises beyond them. The traveler does not deny the existence of the mountains. He places them inside a greater truth. The hills are created. The danger is created. The road is created. The body that grows tired is created. The future that feels unknown to the traveler is not unknown to the Creator. This does not mean that every difficult thing was sent as a punishment or designed to frighten us. It means that nothing confronting us has become greater than the one from whom our help comes. The problem may be larger than Daniel's strength. It is not larger than God. The fever may be outside his control. It is not outside God's sight. The job market may be uncertain. The future is not hidden from its maker. The night may feel long. It still exists beneath the heaven God made. Daniel reads the line again. This time, he does not feel sudden triumph. The rain does not stop. The phone does not ring with a job offer. His daughter's fever does not instantly disappear. But something changes in the size of the room. Fear had made the kitchen feel like the whole universe. The psalm opens a window beyond it. That is often the first work of faith, not removing the hill, but changing what we believe is highest. Anxiety says the danger is the largest reality in the room. Faith does not call the danger imaginary. Faith looks higher. Eliab does the same beneath the stars. He sees the outline of the hills, then looks beyond them to the dark expanse of heaven. The stars do not tell him exactly what will happen on the road. They remind him that the road is not the whole story. Perhaps the traveler whispers the answer aloud so the people near him can hear. My help comes from the Lord. A mother repeats it while holding her child. An older man nods. Someone tends the fire. No miracle flashes across the sky. No path suddenly becomes visible. Yet a group of vulnerable travelers begins to remember that they are not moving through an empty world. This is not optimism. Optimism says things will probably work out the way we hope. Biblical hope goes deeper. It says that even when we do not know how things will work out, the God who made heaven and earth has not surrendered his care. The difference matters because life does not always give us the outcome we expect. Some prayers are answered quickly. Others lead us through long waiting. Some doors open. Others remain closed. Some illnesses pass. Others change a family forever. If faith depends entirely on receiving the result we prefer, then faith will collapse every time the road turns in an unexpected direction. Psalm 121 offers something stronger than control over outcomes. It introduces the keeper. That word has not yet fully appeared in Daniel's mind, but it will become the heartbeat of the song. The psalm will repeat the idea again and again. God keeps. God watches. God guards. God remains near. The promise is not that the traveler will become powerful enough to control the road. The promise is that the traveler is kept by someone who does not lose sight of him. Daniel closes his eyes at the kitchen table. For the first time that night, he prays without trying to sound strong. God, I do not know what to do with all of this. He waits. I am afraid I will miss something. I am afraid I will fail them. I am afraid of what happens next. The prayer is not beautiful. It is honest. I need your help. Those 4 words feel like surrender, but not defeat. Outside, rainwater runs along the curb. Inside, the clock continues forward. His daughter still sleeps. The future remains hidden. Yet Daniel is no longer pretending that his sleeplessness is holding the world together. He reads the next line of the psalm. It speaks of a foot that might slip. The image surprises him. After the enormous declaration about the maker of heaven and earth, the psalm becomes intensely small and personal. It moves from stars and mountains to one human foot touching an uncertain stone. That is where divine care often meets us. Not only in the vast language of creation, but in the next fragile step. Eliab looks at the road climbing into darkness. Tomorrow, he will have to place his weight on stones he cannot test from where he stands tonight. Daniel looks toward the hallway. Morning will bring decisions he cannot make at 2:48 a.m. Both men face the same truth. Help from God does not mean they will be shown the entire journey at once. It means they will not have to take the next step alone. But a difficult question remains. If God is the keeper, does that mean the traveler will never stumble? Does it mean faithful people will never fail, never suffer, never become lost, and never feel the ground move beneath them? The road ahead will force us to look more closely, because the psalm does not promise that every hill will become level. It promises something more intimate. When your strength is uncertain and your footing begins to fail, the God who made the mountains is close enough to steady your next step. Morning does not ask whether the traveler feels ready. It comes quietly over the eastern ridge, turning the black outline of the hills into layers of brown, grey, and pale gold. The camp begins to move before the sun is fully visible. Blankets are rolled, water is measured, bread is divided, tennels are tightened around feet already sore from yesterday's road. Eliab stands and studies the path. In darkness, the hills looked like a single wall. In daylight, he can see something more complicated. There are openings between the rocks, faint tracks left by other travelers, and small ledges where the group can rest. The road is still difficult, but it is not without signs that others have passed this way. That discovery matters. Fear often makes the future appear solid and impossible. It turns a series of steps into one enormous obstacle. It shows us the whole mountain at once, but hides the next place where a foot can land. The travelers begin climbing. A boy near the front tries to move too quickly and is called back by his father. An elderly woman walks with a wooden staff. Two men share the weight of a heavy bundle. No one travels at exactly the same pace. The stronger members of the group sometimes wait. The tired ones sometimes insist they can continue. The road exposes both pride and kindness. Eliab looks up again. I lift my eyes to the hills. Lifting the eyes is not the same as pretending the road is easy. It is an act of attention. It is a decision about what will fill the field of vision. When people are frightened, their eyes naturally move toward the threat. This is part of being human. We watch what might harm us. We calculate. We prepare. We search for signs. But a useful instinct can become a prison when the danger is all we can see. Daniel knows that prison. By morning, the rain has stopped. Grey light enters the kitchen. He has not slept, but he has moved from the table to the couch, where the Bible remains open beside him. His daughter's fever has lowered slightly. She is still resting. The doctor's instructions have not changed. The practical facts should comfort him, but his mind has already moved to other hills. There is an email he expects from a company where he completed a final interview. There is a mortgage payment due next week. There is a conversation with his wife, Rachel, that they have avoided because both of them are tired of trying to protect the other from their own fear. Each problem has become a separate ridge. He looks at the phone, then at the Bible. The psalm asks where help comes from. Daniel has always heard the answer as a statement of belief. This morning, it feels more like a reordering of vision. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The maker is greater than the made. That sentence sounds obvious until fear gives a created thing the authority of a god. Money is created, work is created, health is created, institutions are created, human approval is created, even the body, with all its strength and fragility, is created. Created things can be good, they can be necessary, they can become channels through which God provides, but they cannot carry the final weight of trust. When a created thing becomes the place where we expect ultimate safety, it begins to rule our emotions. A bank balance tells us whether we are allowed to have peace. A medical result tells us whether hope is reasonable. A person's response tells us whether we have value. A job title tells us who we are. A plan tells us whether God is still good. Then, when the created thing changes, our entire world shakes. Psalm 121 does not tell the traveler to despise the hill's hour. It tells him not to mistake them for the source of help. Eliab knows that Jerusalem lies beyond the heights. He may also know that high places in the ancient world were often associated with power, worship, fortresses, and danger. A hill could hold a sanctuary, a watchtower, a band of robbers, or nothing at all. The landscape could not promise what waited within it. So the pilgrim looks beyond the hills to the one who made them. That movement is the difference between using faith as a decoration and allowing faith to change the center of a life. It is easy to speak about God as creator when the sky is beautiful. It is harder to remember him as creator when the future feels threatening. Yet that is precisely when the truth becomes personal. If God made heaven and earth, then he is not trapped inside Daniel's problem with the same limited view Daniel has. God is not reading the same uncertain email and wondering what it means. God is not surprised by the fever. God is not measuring the future using only the money remaining in an account. God does not need tomorrow's information in order to know how to be faithful today. This does not mean Daniel receives a secret explanation. Faith is not access to all the details God knows. It is trust in the character of the one who knows them. That kind of trust grows slowly. Rachel enters the kitchen wearing a robe and carrying the quiet exhaustion of someone who has also slept badly. She sees Daniel on the couch. "You stayed up all night?" she asks. "Mostly." "You could have woken me. You needed sleep. So did you." There is no anger in her voice, only concern. But Daniel hears an accusation because guilt is already present inside him. He closes the Bible. "I was watching her." Rachel sits beside him. "You do not have to watch everything alone." The sentence lands more deeply than she intends. Daniel looks away. Someone has to. For a moment, neither of them speaks. This is how fear damages relationships without making a sound. One person carries too much because they believe love requires it. Another person feels shut out because help is never requested. Both are trying to protect the same home, but fear teaches them to stand guard in separate rooms. Rachel places her hand over his. "What are you really afraid of?" Daniel could answer with the fever. It would be true, but not complete. He could answer with the job, also true. He could answer with the mortgage, the medical bills from the previous year, the possibility of disappointing his family, or the silent shame of not knowing what comes next. Instead, he says, "I am afraid that one day you will need me to fix something, and I will not be able to." Rachel's expression softens. The deepest fears are often not about events. They are about identity. What if I am not enough? What if I cannot protect the people I love? What if my weakness harms them? What if the hill proves who I really am? Rachel answers carefully. "I do not need you to be God." The words are gentle, but they uncover something. Daniel has never consciously wanted to be God. He would reject the idea immediately. Yet control often becomes a hidden attempt to occupy a place no human being can hold. We try to know every outcome, prevent every pain, maintain every relationship, answer every need, and remain strong without rest. Then we call ourselves failures when we cannot do what only God can do. The confession beneath Psalm 121 is not only, "I need help." It is also, "I am not the source of my own help." That is humility. But it is also freedom. Eliab feels the heat increase as the group climbs. The sun reaches the open path. Sweat gathers beneath his head covering. His pack pulls against his shoulders. The group has not gone far, yet the first excitement of morning has faded. A younger traveler points toward a distant ridge. "Is Jerusalem beyond that one?" An older man smiles. "Beyond that and more." The boy's face falls. Adults do the same thing in quieter ways. We want to know how many hills remain. We want a map with every difficulty marked, every delay measured, and every ending guaranteed. We ask God for direction, but sometimes what we really want is total visibility. The psalm offers guidance without giving the traveler a complete map. It tells him who keeps him. This is one of the hidden comforts of biblical faith. God often gives relationship before explanation. We ask, How will this end? He says, I am with you. We ask, why did this happen? He reminds us who he is. We ask, can I see the whole road? He gives light for the next step. To an anxious mind, this can feel insufficient. We want certainty we can hold, but certainty about outcomes is fragile because outcomes change. The presence of God is a foundation beneath change. Daniel's phone vibrates. His body responds before his mind does. His heart quickens. He reaches for the device and sees an email notification from the company. For 1 second, the kitchen becomes silent. Rachel watches him. He opens the message. The opening line is polite. The next sentence says they appreciated his time. He already knows what follows. They have chosen another candidate. The hill he feared is suddenly under his feet. Daniel reads the message twice. There is no mistake, no hidden possibility, no invitation to wait, just a closed door expressed in professional language. Rachel moves closer. I am sorry. He locks the phone and places it face down. A familiar thought rises immediately. God did not help. It is not a theological conclusion carefully considered. It is the emotional meaning of disappointment. Daniel had prayed. The opportunity had looked right. The timing seemed necessary. The interview had gone well. If help meant receiving the job, then help had not come. He stands and walks to the sink. Outside, water hangs from the branches. A small bird lands on the fence, shakes its feathers, and flies away. The ordinary world continues with painful indifference. Maybe I should have prepared differently, he says. Rachel does not answer. Maybe I said the wrong thing. You do not know that. I should have known. There it is again. The belief that enough knowledge could have controlled the outcome. Rachel looks toward the open Bible. What were you reading? Psalm 121. She waits. Daniel gives a tired laugh. My help comes from the Lord. The words sound almost bitter now. Faith is often tested not when the verse is unknown, but when the verse remains true while the preferred outcome disappears. What does help mean after the rejection email? The question cannot be answered with a slogan. There are forms of Christian speech that move too quickly. They rush to say that something better is coming. They explain every closed door as protection. They turn pain into a lesson before a person has been allowed to feel it. Sometimes those statements may eventually prove true, but when spoken too soon, they can make grace sound like impatience. Rachel does not tell Daniel that everything happens for a reason. She does not promise that a better job will arrive next week. She simply remains beside him. Presence is sometimes the first form of help. A few minutes later, their daughter calls from the hallway. Her voice is weak but clear. Rachel goes to her. Daniel stays by the sink. He looks again toward the Bible. The maker of heaven and earth did not become smaller because the email said no. But Daniel's understanding of help must become deeper. He returns to the couch and reads the next words. The psalm speaks of a foot that will not be allowed to slip and of a keeper who will not slumber. The language is intimate. God's care is described not only in the scale of creation, but in the vulnerable mechanics of walking. A foot slips quickly. There is no long warning. A stone shifts, weight moves, balance disappears. The body reaches for something solid. Eliab encounters such a moment before midday. The path curves around a steep section of rock. The travelers move in single file. Dust covers the surface. Eliab places his right foot on what appears to be a firm stone. It rolls beneath him. His body tilts toward the slope. For an instant, there is no time for prayer, thought, or courage. There is only the instinctive movement of a hand reaching outward. Another traveler catches his arm. The man pulls him back toward the path. A second person steadies the pack. Stones scatter down the incline and disappear below. Eliab stands motionless, breathing hard. "You are safe," the man says. Safe. The word is true in that moment, yet Eliab's foot did slip. How then should we understand the promise? The psalm is not written by someone who believes human beings never experience instability. The Bible is filled with faithful people whose lives shook beneath them. Abraham feared. Jacob wrestled. Moses became overwhelmed. David fled. Elijah collapsed beneath exhaustion. Peter failed publicly. Paul endured danger, loss, and uncertainty. God's people are not people who never stumble. They are people whose stumbling does not place them beyond the reach of the keeper. Perhaps the promise is not that no stone will ever move. Perhaps it is that no unstable moment will have the final word over the life God keeps. That interpretation does not reduce God's power, it makes his care more personal. He is present not only before the slip, but within the recovery. He works through the hand that reaches, the strength that remains, the warning that redirects, the grace that restores, and the path that continues after fear. Eliab thanks the traveler who caught him. The man shrugs as if it were nothing. But to the person who almost fell, a hand can feel like providence. How many forms can God's help take without announcing itself? A friend who calls before a lonely decision, a doctor who notices what another person missed, a delay that prevents us from entering danger, a conversation that interrupts despair, a closed door that exposes what we were trusting, a spouse who says, "You do not have to carry this alone." A verse remembered at 2 in the morning. Not every event can be explained. We must be careful not to turn every inconvenience into a coded message from heaven or claim certainty about God's hidden purposes. Faith does not require us to invent explanations. It teaches us to recognize that grace may be active even when the whole design remains unseen. Daniel sits beside his daughter on the couch later that morning. She is wrapped in a blanket and drinking water. The fever has continued to lower. Rachel is making toast. The rejection email is still real. The mortgage is still due. Yet Daniel notices something he would have missed during the night. He is not alone in the room. His daughter leans against him. Rachel places a plate on the table. Sunlight begins to break through the clouds. These things do not solve the larger problem. They are not replacements for employment or guarantees about tomorrow. They are evidence that the hill is not the only thing present. This is why lifting the eyes is a repeated act. We do not do it once and remain permanently fearless. The eyes fall again. The problem fills the frame. Faith lifts them again. The psalmist does not say, "I looked at the hills once." The movement feels ongoing. I lift my eyes, today, in this hour. After this disappointment, before this conversation, while the answer is incomplete, I lift my eyes beyond what is created to the Creator who remains. Eliab continues walking. His foot is more careful now. For several minutes, he feels embarrassed by the near fall. Then he notices that everyone on the road has needed help in some form. The older woman leans on her staff. The child holds his father's hand. Men with the heavy bundle exchange positions. Strength in a pilgrim community is shared. The person most in danger may be the one determined to appear self-sufficient. Daniel begins to understand the same truth. The loss of the job has not only reduced his income, it has threatened the version of himself he wanted to maintain: reliable, capable, needed, in control. But perhaps the collapse of that image is not the collapse of his life. Perhaps grace is teaching him to receive help without shame. He sends a message to a friend he has avoided for weeks. "Could we talk sometime today?" The reply comes almost immediately. "Of course." One small step. Not the whole road, just enough ground for the next movement. By afternoon, Eliab's group reaches a wider place between the rocks. They stop beneath the limited shade of an overhang. From there, the hills extend in every direction. The road behind is partly visible. The road ahead disappears again. Eliab looks back at the section where he nearly fell. From this distance, it appears ordinary. No mark shows where the stone moved. No sign announces the danger he escaped. Many moments of grace leave no monument. We remember the dramatic rescue, but not always the quiet preservation. We notice what went wrong, but not the thousand things that did not. We count the doors that closed and overlook the strength that carried us to them. We ask why the path was difficult and forget to ask how we kept walking. The deepest lesson has not yet arrived. Daniel still does not understand why the psalm repeats the language of keeping. Eliab still has hours of road before night, but both are beginning to see that divine help is not always a force that removes the mountain. Sometimes it is the presence that teaches a traveler where to place the next foot. And as evening approaches, another human limit will become impossible to ignore. Feet become tired. Eyes become heavy. Even the most devoted watchman eventually begins to sleep. What happens to the people in the camp when the one assigned to guard them can no longer remain awake? Psalm 121 is about to answer with one of the most comforting truths in all of Scripture. The keeper of your life has never once needed to close his eyes. A person can lose balance before anyone else notices. The body is still upright. The face may still look calm. The voice may still answer, "I'm fine." But beneath the surface, weight has shifted. The ground no longer feels secure. One more movement could reveal what has already begun, and by late afternoon, Eliab feels the ache of the journey in his legs. The group has been climbing for hours. The hills seem to multiply each time they reach a ridge. From one height, another appears. The road is not cruel, but it is indifferent to human impatience. It does not shorten because a traveler is tired. The near fall from earlier remains in Eliab's mind. He remembers the stone moving beneath his sandal. He remembers the sudden emptiness in his stomach, the involuntary reach of his hand, and the grip of another traveler closing around his arm. The whole event lasted only seconds, yet fear has replayed it many times. Now he tests every stone before trusting it. Caution is wise, but fear slowly turns caution into hesitation. Eliab begins to move more slowly than necessary. He watches the ground so intensely that he nearly walks into the person ahead of him. The hills, the sky, The people and the distant signs of Jerusalem disappear from his vision. There is only the next stone and the possibility that it may betray him. This is another way a slip can continue long after the body has recovered. The event ends, but the fear remains. The relationship is repaired, but trust still trembles. The illness passes, but every new symptom awakens the memory. The financial crisis improves, but the person can no longer spend a small amount without guilt. A harsh word is forgiven, but it continues to echo in the room. The foot was steadied, the heart is still falling. Daniel knows that feeling too. His daughter's fever is nearly gone by evening. She has eaten soup, complained about being bored, and asked whether she can watch another movie. These are ordinary signs of recovery, and Daniel is grateful. Yet his body remains tense. Every time she coughs, he looks up. Every time his phone vibrates, he expects another rejection. Every mention of money feels like an accusation. The immediate danger has weakened, but his inner footing has not returned. After dinner, Rachel sits across from him at the table. Their daughter is asleep upstairs, this time more peacefully. The dishes remain between them because neither has the energy to move. "We need to talk about the next few months," Rachel says. Daniel nods, but he does not look at her. "We have enough for now," she continues. "Not forever, but for now, I know. My hours may increase next month. You should not have to do that. I am not saying I have to. I am saying we have options." Daniel hears the word options, but inside him it becomes evidence of failure. Rachel is offering partnership. Shame translates it into judgment. "I will find something," he says. "I believe you will. Then why are we talking like I won't?" Rachel becomes quiet. The sentence hangs in the air, sharper than Daniel intended. There are moments when fear puts words in our mouths and then leaves us alone with the damage. Daniel sees the change in Rachel's face. He wants to take the sentence back, but pride arrives before apology. "I am trying to be realistic," she says. "So am I." "No, you are trying to make sure none of this touches anyone except you." He stands and carries his plate to the sink. The conversation ends without ending. Later, Daniel sits alone in the dark living room. He has not apologized. Rachel has gone upstairs. The Bible is on the coffee table, open to Psalm 121. "He will not let your foot slip." The line almost irritates him. His foot has slipped. He lost the job. He spoke harshly to his wife. His confidence has become suspicion. His prayers feel thin. If the promise means that faithful people never experience instability, then Daniel has already failed it, or it has failed him. This is where many people quietly leave difficult verses behind. They do not reject God with dramatic words. They simply stop bringing their actual lives to the text. They admire the promise from a distance because close examination seems dangerous. But Scripture does not need protection from honest questions. The Bible is filled with people who knew what it meant to lose their footing. The psalmists cried from pits, caves, deserts, sickbeds, and places of betrayal. Job spoke from grief. Jeremiah wept over ruin. Peter stepped onto water with courage and then began to sink in fear. Thomas struggled to believe what others had seen. Even strong faith was often described with trembling hands. The biblical story does not present God's people as those who never slip. It presents God as the one who does not let their slipping become their final destination. There is a difference between stumbling and being abandoned. There is a difference between falling to your knees and falling beyond grace. There is a difference between losing confidence in yourself and losing the faithful hold of God. Daniel reads the line again, then the next. The language of the psalm is not primarily about the traveler's grip on God. It is about God's keeping of the traveler. That changes everything. When faith is measured only by how tightly we hold, every season of weakness becomes terrifying. What happens when grief numbs the heart? What happens when prayer becomes difficult? What happens when doubt enters? What happens when exhaustion makes worship feel empty? If salvation and divine care depend on the unbroken strength of our grasp, then tired people have little hope. But the image of the keeper turns the question around. The deepest security is not that the traveler never trembles her. It is that God does not release him her. Eliab learns this through the community around him her. As the group resumes walking after a short rest, the older woman with the staff begins to struggle her. Her steps become uneven her. She insists that she can continue, but her breathing grows heavy her. Two younger travelers offer to carry her bundle her. At first, she refuses her. "I brought it," she says. "I will carry it her." One of the men smiles. "And we are traveling the same road." The woman looks at him for a long moment, then allows the burden to be lifted from her shoulders. Her pace improves almost immediately. Eliab watches. The road has revealed something pride tries to hide. A burden can become dangerous simply because we insist it must remain ours. Many people do not collapse because no help exists. They collapse because receiving help feels like becoming less worthy. We tell ourselves that strong parents never ask for rest. Strong leaders never admit uncertainty. Strong believers never confess doubt. Strong spouses absorb pain quietly. Strong children do not add to the family's trouble. Strong people carry what they picked up, no matter how heavy it becomes. Then Psalm 121 asks us to trust a keeper, to be kept. We must accept that we are not self-sustaining. This is difficult for Daniel Eliab. Work had given structure to his days and dignity to his effort. There was nothing wrong with that. But gradually, usefulness became identity. Providing became proof of love. Control became proof of responsibility. When the job disappeared, he did not only lose employment, he lost the mirror that told him who he was. Now every offer of help feels like confirmation that the old reflection is gone. He hears Rachel moving upstairs. The impulse to remain silent is strong. Silence can feel safer than humility because silence allows us to imagine we are still in control of the story. Daniel stands. Each step toward the stairs feels heavier than it should. He finds Rachel folding clothes in their bedroom. She does not look up immediately. "I am sorry," he says. The words do not repair everything, but they stop the fall. Rachel sets down a shirt. "I know you are afraid," she says. "I do not want you to think I have given up. I do not want our daughter to feel any of this. She will feel some of it. She lives here. But she can also feel that we face it together." Daniel sits on the edge of the bed. "I keep thinking that if I plan enough, search enough, stay awake enough, I can keep this from becoming something worse." Rachel sits beside him. "And can you?" He shakes his head. The admission is painful. It is also the first firm ground he has touched all day. Truth often feels like falling until we discover grace beneath it. Daniel tells Rachel about the psalm. He tells her how the line about the foot troubled him. He tells her he does not understand what protection means if life can still hurt. Rachel does not offer a complete answer. She says, maybe being kept is not the same as never being shaken. The sentence stays with him. Maybe being kept is not the same as never being shaken. A tree can move violently in a storm and remain rooted. A child can cry in a parent's arms and remain held. A traveler can stumble and still be on the road. A believer can question and still be within the mercy of God. The world often confuses peace with the absence of movement, but biblical peace can exist while the wind is still blowing. It is not always a calm surface. Sometimes it is a deep root. Eliab sees the wind before he feels it. Dust rises along the path ahead. The leaves of a few small shrubs turn their pale undersides toward the sky. A cloud passes over the sun. The group leader urges everyone to keep close together as the trail crosses an exposed slope. The wind comes hard from the side. Clothing snaps, sand strikes faces. The boy near the front begins to cry. The older woman lowers her head and grips her staff. The travelers lean into the gusts. No one can stop the wind. They can only adjust their weight, hold one another, and continue when the gust weakens. Eliab notices that the person who caught him earlier now walks near the outer edge of the group, creating a small shield for the child. Another traveler places a hand on the older woman's back. The strongest do not remove the storm. They become signs that no one is facing it alone. God's keeping often arrives through human hands. This does not make it less divine. We sometimes imagine that only the spectacular counts as God's work. We look for seas opening, fire falling, diseases disappearing in an instant, and impossible doors swinging wide. Scripture certainly contains mighty acts. God is free to act beyond every human expectation, but the Bible also speaks of daily bread, wise counsel, shared burdens, quiet endurance, timely encouragement, and strength renewed one day at a time. A miracle does not become ordinary merely because it arrives wearing a familiar face. The friend who answers the phone, the meal left at the door, the counselor who helps name what has remained hidden, the church member who remembers a difficult anniversary, the employer who treats a person with dignity, the child whose laughter interrupts a dark thought, the courage to apologize before pride hardens. These may not change the entire landscape, they can keep a foot from sliding further. Daniel calls his friend Marcus the next morning. They have known each other since college, but Daniel has avoided him since losing the job. Marcus is successful in a way that makes Daniel feel exposed. He has not done anything wrong. His life simply reflects the stability Daniel fears he has lost. When Marcus answers, he does not ask why Daniel waited so long to call. He listens. Daniel explains the rejection, the money, the sleepless night, and the argument with Rachel. The words come slowly at first, then more quickly. Saying them aloud makes the fears sound both more real and less powerful. Marcus is quiet for a moment. "I cannot fix all of that," he says. Daniel almost laughs. "That makes two of us." "But I can help you look. And I know someone who may need a project manager for a short contract. It is not permanent. I do not know if it will work, but I can introduce you." The old Daniel might have heard short contract as something beneath him. The frightened Daniel might have heard uncertainty and refused to hope. The person being slowly steadied hears a possible next step. "Thank you," he says. Nothing is guaranteed, yet help has taken a form. The introduction may lead to work or to another closed door. The spiritual lesson does not depend on predicting which. The grace already present is that Daniel is no longer walking alone. This is important because Christian hope must not become a way of manipulating God. We do not say, "I trusted, therefore the contract must succeed." Trust is not a spiritual payment that forces a preferred result. Trust says, "Whether this becomes the answer I hope for or another turn in the road, God remains my keeper." That confession is easier to write than to live. Eliab's group reaches a section where the trail divides. One path appears shorter but steeper, the other circles around the ridge. The leader studies both, then chooses the longer road. A few travelers complain, "We will lose an hour. The sun is already falling. We can manage the shorter path." The leader points toward loose rock near the upper slope. "Not with the children, not today." They take the longer road. Later, from below, they hear stones breaking loose on the path they did not choose. The sound echoes through the valley. No one speaks for a while. Sometimes protection looks like a delay. Sometimes the road that frustrates us is the road that preserves us. But we must hold this truth with humility. We cannot look at every delay and declare exactly what God prevented. We do not know the unseen world in that way. We should not invent stories simply to make uncertainty comfortable. Still, there are moments when hindsight reveals mercy. A relationship that ended before greater harm. An opportunity that failed before compromising a deeper value. A plan interrupted before the timing was right. A long route that kept a vulnerable traveler from loose stone stoop. The mature response is not to claim perfect understanding, it is to become open to the possibility that God's care may be present in forms we initially resist. By sunset, Eliab is tired in a different way. The road has not become easier, but his attention has widened. He still watches his feet. He also watches the people around him. He notices where the trail has been reinforced by earlier hands. He notices small piles of stones marking the direction. He notices water shared without being requested. The keeper's care seems to leave traces everywhere, yet none of them can be possessed. They are received one step at a time. Daniel experiences the same change during the next several days. He applies for more positions. Some applications disappear into silence. The contract introduction leads to a conversation, then another. There is no dramatic breakthrough. The numbers in the account continue to matter. The tension does not evaporate. But Daniel begins sleeping for several hours at a time. He and Rachel make a plan together. They reduce expenses without treating every sacrifice as disaster. They tell two trusted friends the truth. They accept a meal from Rachel's sister without apologizing for needing it. Daniel takes his daughter to the park when she recovers, and for 40 minutes he allows her laughter to exist without calculating the future. None of this means his foot will never slip again. It means the fall is no longer happening in secret. Shame grows in isolation. Grace often enters through honest presence. The Psalm's promise becomes less like a guarantee of perfect stability and more like a declaration of faithful relationship. The Lord will not allow the life he keeps to disappear into meaninglessness. He can restore after failure. He can redirect after confusion. He can hold a person through grief. He can preserve faith when faith feels like a small ember rather than a fire. He can use the community of believers, the wisdom of professionals, the kindness of strangers, and the ordinary structures of life as instruments of care. Being kept does not make us passive. Eliab still walks. Daniel still applies. The older woman still uses her staff. The leader still studies the path. Faith is not refusal to act. It is action without the illusion that action makes us sovereign. The traveler prepares, but God keeps. The parent watches, but God keeps. The doctor treats, but God keeps. The worker labors, but God keeps. The believer prays, but even when the prayer becomes weak, God keeps. Evening settles over the hills again. The travelers find a place to camp, near a cluster of stones that offers some protection from the wind. A fire is lit, bread is passed, children lie close to their families, the old woman's burden rests on the ground beside her. Someone must remain awake at the edge of the camp. The group chooses watches. One person will guard during the first part of the night, another during the next, and another before dawn. Human beings can protect one another, but only in shifts. Each watchman carries the same limitation. Eventually, the body will demand sleep. Eliab takes the second watch. He wraps his garment more tightly and sits where he can see the path. The fire becomes smaller, voices fade, stars appear with breathtaking clarity. For a while, he feels alert. Then the day's exhaustion begins to pull at him. His eyelids grow heavy. He stands, walks, sits again, and listens to the dark. What happens when the keeper needs keeping? What happens when the parent watching beside the bed can no longer stay awake? What happens when the doctor goes home? The friend stops answering. The leader misses something. The body weakens, or the mind cannot maintain attention. Every human watchman has an ending to his strength. Psalm 121 is about to make a claim no human protector can make. The one who keeps you will not slumber, not for a moment, not during the hour you fear most, not when your prayer is silent, not when your eyes finally close. The night does not become safe because Eliab is strong enough to watch it. The night is held by a keeper whose attention has no shadow of exhaustion. The night watch begins with confidence and ends with confession. At first, Eliab sits upright near the edge of the camp. The small fire behind him throws a weak orange light across the stones. Beyond that light, the road disappears. Every sound has a shape in his imagination. Wind moving through dry grass, a stone shifting on the slope, the distant cry of an animal, the soft movement of a sleeper turning beneath a cloak. He tells himself he will remain alert. The people behind him are trusting the watch. Children are sleeping. Supplies are gathered near the center of the camp. The older travelers need rest before morning. Eliab feels the weight of being responsible for lives that have temporarily closed their eyes. For the first hour, that responsibility sharpens him. He walks the edge of the campsite. He checks the path. He adds a small piece of wood to the fire. He looks toward the stars and quietly repeats the song. The one who keeps you will not slumber. The line comforts him, but it also exposes him. Eliab is keeping watch, and he is already tired. His back aches, his thoughts drift. The cool air makes the warmth near the fire inviting. He sits for a moment, promising himself that he will stand again soon. His eyes close, only for a breath. He opens them quickly and looks around. Nothing has changed. The camp is still. Shame rises as though he has committed a betrayal. He stands and rubs his face. This is the weakness every human protector eventually discovers. Love can be strong while the body is limited. A mother can love her child completely and still fall asleep. A father can want to solve every problem and still lack the answer. A nurse can remain attentive for hours and still need another person to take the next shift. A pastor can care deeply and still miss a hidden wound. A friend can promise to be available and still fail to answer at the needed moment. Human keeping is real, valuable, and often beautiful, but it is never absolute. We keep one another in fragments. God keeps without interruption. Daniel first understood this truth as a child, though he did not have words for it. When he was 8 years old, a storm passed through his town late one summer night. Thunder shook the windows. Lightning illuminated the room in sudden white flashes. Daniel left his bed and found his father sitting near the front window. "Are you watching the storm?" Daniel asked. "I'm watching the house," his father said. The answer made the child feel safe. His father was awake. Someone stronger was paying attention. Daniel curled beneath a blanket on the couch and fell asleep while the storm continued. Years later, he learned what he had not known then. His father had also been afraid. A tree had fallen near the house earlier that evening. The wind was stronger than expected. The power had failed twice. His father had no control over the weather. He was simply doing what a loving parent could do, staying present. The memory is tender because the protection was imperfect and real. But Daniel's father eventually slept. Years after that, he grew ill. And one winter morning, the man who had once watched the storm was no longer there to watch anything in this world. The death changed Daniel's relationship with responsibility. He became the one who checked doors, read instructions, carried emergency numbers, and remained calm when others were afraid. He did not consciously decide to replace his father. He simply learned that the people who make us feel safe can disappear. Somewhere inside him, vigilance became a form of grief. If he remained awake, prepared, useful, and alert, perhaps he would never again feel like the child who discovered that human watchmen do not remain forever. Psalm 121 enters that wound with extraordinary gentleness. The keeper of Israel does not slumber or sleep. The psalm does not mock human protectors, it places them beneath a greater protection. Your mother may have become tired, your father may have failed, but your spouse may not understand every fear. Your friend may miss the call. The person you trusted may no longer be present. The people who love you most cannot watch every doorway of your life. But their limits do not mean that you have been left unguarded in an empty universe. God is not another exhausted watchman. He does not begin the night attentive and become careless before dawn. He does not misplace your name among billions of names. He does not turn toward a more important crisis and forget yours. He does not need to be reminded that you are afraid. He does not become impatient because the same concern has returned. He does not confuse silence with absence. The image is almost too comforting to receive because every form of human attention we know has limits. Even the most loving gaze eventually turns away. We expect divine attention to behave like human attention, strong for a time, then distracted. Psalm 121 insists that God's keeping belongs to a different order. The one who made the rhythms of waking and sleeping does not depend on them. The one who gave rest to human bodies does not need rest from being God. This does not mean God is restless. It means his care is never reduced by exhaustion. There is no hour in heaven when the lights are dimmed and urgent prayers are placed in a queue for morning. There is no moment when God says, "I did not see that happen." There is no night shift in which his mercy becomes less attentive. For Daniel, this truth is not immediately peaceful. At first, it is painful. One evening, several days after the rejection email, he wakes from a brief sleep with his heart racing. The house is quiet. Rachel is beside him. The clock reads 1:43 a.m. His mind begins its familiar work. He remembers the account balance here. He imagines the contract opportunity failing here. He wonders whether his daughter's cough has returned here. He thinks of his father watching the storm. Daniel reaches toward the phone. His hand stops. The movement has become a ritual. Wake, check, search, calculate, watch. He realizes that the phone is not giving him peace. It is giving his fear a task. He lies still and repeats the line from the psalm, "He who keeps you will not slumber." The words feel distant. He says them again. "The keeper of Israel does not slumber or sleep." He does not experience a sudden wave of emotion. His heart continues beating quickly. The account remains what it was. The future remains unwritten from his perspective. But a choice appears. He can begin the night watch again. Or he can admit that someone else is already awake. Rest, in that moment, becomes an act of faith. Not because sleep solves the problem, not because responsible people should ignore real needs. Not because medical symptoms, financial deadlines, and dangerous situations do not require attention. Rest becomes faith when Daniel has done what love and wisdom require, and anxiety demands that he continue pretending to be sovereign. There is a difference between watchfulness and fear-driven vigilance. Watchfulness responds to reality. Fear-driven vigilance tries to prevent uncertainty from existing. Watchfulness can accept help. Fear-driven vigilance believes no one else can be trusted. Watchfulness eventually rests. Fear-driven vigilance calls rest irresponsible. Many exhausted people are not merely tired because life is difficult. They are tired because they believe their attention is the final barrier between order and disaster. Parents carry this burden. Caregivers carry it. People who grew up in unstable homes carry it. Those who had to become responsible too young carry it. Leaders carry it. People who have experienced sudden loss carry it. They scan rooms. They anticipate needs. They notice changes in tone. They prepare for disappointment before anyone else sees it coming. These skills may have helped them survive, but survival habits can become prisons when the danger has passed. Psalm 121 does not demand that such people simply relax. It gives them a reason to release what they were never meant to carry alone. The reason is the keeper, Eliab, struggles through the second watch. He walks again. He whispers the psalm. He listens. Then, near the darkest part of the night, another traveler approaches. "My watch begins," the man says. Eliab exhales with relief. He gives a brief report. Nothing unusual. The fire is low. The road has been quiet. Then he lies down among the others. Human watchmen depend on replacement. One rests because another rises. But who replaces God? No one. No one needs to. His attention is not a resource that becomes depleted. His knowledge is not divided. His presence is not stretched thin by distance. He is wholly present to the cry of one frightened child, and the grief of an entire nation. His greatness does not make individual pain invisible. It makes perfect attention possible. This is why the psalm moves from the keeper of Israel to your keeper. The God of a people is also the God who attends to a person. The one who guards generations sees one traveler's foot. The one who rules heaven and earth remains near a single right hand. We often imagine that our concerns are too small for God or too repetitive to matter. We compare our pain to the suffering of others and silence ourselves. We say, other people have it worse, as though compassion were a limited supply. Gratitude and perspective are important, but they should not become ways of hiding from God. A child does not become less loved because another child is also crying. God does not need us to minimize our need in order to manage his attention. Daniel begins practicing a simple prayer at night. He does not call it a technique. He does not treat it as a guarantee of sleep. Some nights remain difficult. He names what he has done. I sent the applications I could send today. I checked our daughter. She is safe in this moment. Rachel knows what I am carrying. I have made the necessary calls. Then he names what he cannot do. I cannot force an answer. I cannot see tomorrow. I cannot protect everyone from every pain. I cannot remain awake forever. Finally, he names who God is. You are awake. You are here. You are the keeper. Hold what I cannot hold. This prayer does not always remove anxiety. Sometimes it creates enough space for Daniel to breathe slowly. Sometimes tears come. Sometimes he sleeps. Sometimes he lies awake but no longer feels alone. Peace is not always the immediate disappearance of physical tension. It can begin as companionship within tension. The deepest comfort of God's sleeplessness is not that believers will always feel calm. It is that their lack of calm does not interrupt his care. You may be reading the psalm with a racing heart. You may still need medical support, wise counsel, practical help, or a difficult conversation. You may need to leave a harmful situation, ask someone to share the burden, or seek professional care for anxiety that has become overwhelming. Trusting God does not require refusing human help. The keeper often provides through people knowledge, treatment, community, and courageous action. The point is not that you should do nothing. The point is that even after you have done what is yours to do, you are not responsible for becoming God. That boundary can be holy. Eliab wakes before dawn. For a few seconds, he does not remember where he is. Then he hears the low voices of travelers preparing to move. The fire is nearly gone. The eastern sky has begun to lighten. He looks toward the edge of the camp. The third watchman is still awake. No danger came during the night, at least none they could see. Eliab is grateful, but the psalm teaches him not to confuse the human watchman with the ultimate source of safety. The man at the edge of camp is a servant of care, not its foundation. The foundation is the God who watched both the sleepers and the watchmen. The group begins another day. Daniel also wakes after several hours of sleep. The first thing he notices is the light. Pale morning brightness rests on the bedroom wall. The second thing he notices is guilt. He slept. For a moment, anxiety tells him that something may have happened while he was not watching. He reaches for the phone, then pauses. No missed emergency calls, no terrible message. He listens to the house. He hears his daughter laughing at something downstairs. He hears Rachel opening a cabinet. Life continued without Daniel's supervision. The realization is humbling and freeing. The world did not need his sleeplessness in order to reach morning. There will be nights when bad news does come. The psalm is not a promise that every morning will begin with relief. Some people wake to absence, diagnosis, conflict, or grief. To speak honestly about God's keeping, we cannot build the message on the assumption that nothing painful happens while He watches. This is the difficult question waiting beneath the comfort. If the keeper never sleeps, why are there hospital rooms where prayers end in tears? Why do faithful people lose work, relationships, health, and loved ones? Why does danger sometimes reach the camp? Why does the foot sometimes break, even if the soul is not abandoned? A shallow answer would say that enough faith prevents all harm. Scripture does not support that promise, and human suffering exposes its cruelty. It turns every wounded person into a defendant and every unanswered prayer into an accusation. Psalm 121 offers protection. But we must listen carefully to the kind of protection it describes. The song will speak of shade at the traveler's right hand, of sun by day and moon by night, of evil, life, departure, return, real time, and eternity. Its vision is larger than comfort in a single moment. The keeper's faithfulness cannot be measured only by whether one feared event occurs. God is not faithful merely when the fever lowers, the job arrives, the storm passes, or the traveler reaches camp without injury. He is faithful in ways that move through suffering without being defeated by it. That truth is harder than the promise of an easy road. It is also far more durable. Later that morning, Daniel receives a call about the short contract Marcus mentioned. The manager wants to speak with him the following day. Daniel writes down the details. Hope rises, followed immediately by fear. What if this fails too? He notices the question and does not shame himself for it. I do not know what will happen, he tells Rachel. No, she says, but you can take the call. One step, a watched step, but not a controlled future. As Eliab's group leaves camp, the sun rises rapidly. The coolness of night disappears. The path ahead is exposed with little shelter. The danger changes form. At night, the traveler fears what cannot be seen. In daylight, he must endure what cannot be avoided. The sun presses against the road, heat gathers in the stones, the travelers search for shade. Then the psalm offers another image of divine care. The Lord is your shade at your right hand, not a distant roof, not a shelter that remains behind while the traveler moves. Shade at the right hand, near, personal, accompanying. But what does that nearness look like when the sun still burns? What does God's protection mean when the difficult thing is not removed? The next part of the journey will reveal a quieter form of miracle. Not always escape from the heat, but a presence close enough to preserve the traveler within it. Before leaving the campsite, Eliab turns once more toward the place where he kept watch. In daylight, the darkness appears smaller. The stones are ordinary. The path is empty. Nothing in the landscape reveals the battle he fought against sleep. Many of our greatest struggles leave no visible evidence. No one sees the hours you spent imagining every possible loss. No one hears the argument in your mind between trust and control. No one knows how difficult it was to put the phone down, close the door, or allow another person to carry part of the burden. God sees the hidden exhaustion. His sleeplessness is not a standard against which your tiredness is judged. It is mercy offered to the tired. The psalm does not say, "Become like the keeper and never rest." It says, in effect, "Because the keeper does not sleep, you are free to be human." This is an important distinction, Con. Religious people can turn even comforting truths into new demands, Con. We hear that God is faithful, Con, then tell ourselves we must never feel afraid, Con. We hear that God keeps us, Con, then decide we must show perfect confidence, Con. We hear that he never sleeps, Con, then use the night to prove our devotion by worrying in spiritual language, Con. But God does not ask Daniel to produce the appearance of peace, Con. He invites him into dependence, Con. Dependence may include shaking hands, Con. It may include medicine beside the bed. It may include a written budget, a friend's phone number, a therapist's office, a community meal, or a prayer spoken through tears. The presence of these things does not mean faith has failed. They may be part of the shade God provides. Daniel begins to see that trust is not a single emotional achievement. It is a repeated transfer of weight. Each night, the burden returns. Each night, he can place it down again. Each morning, responsibility returns. Each morning, he can carry only the portion given for that day. The keeper remains when Daniel succeeds at this practice and when he forgets. God's faithfulness is not created by Daniel's awareness of it. This may be the most peaceful truth of all. While you are trying to remember God, God has never forgotten you. By mid-morning, the sun has changed the character of the road. What felt cool and open at dawn now feels exposed. The hills reflect heat upward. Dust rises around the travelers' sandals and clings to their clothing. The air is so still that every breath seems to remain near the face. Eliab adjusts the cloth around his head and continues. The group has entered a stretch with almost no trees. There are low shrubs, scattered stones, and occasional shelves of rock, but little shelter. The children speak less. The adults conserve their strength. Water is passed carefully from one person to another. Night created fear through what could not be seen. Day creates pressure through what cannot be escaped. The sun is not hiding, it is present above every step. This is when the psalm changes its image. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. Shade sounds gentle to people who live near buildings, air-conditioned rooms, and roads lined with trees. To a traveller under an ancient sun, shade can mean preservation. It is the difference between continuing and collapsing. It is the place where breathing slows, water lasts longer, and the body remembers that it is not made of stone. But the psalm does not merely say that God provides a shaded place somewhere ahead. It says he is shade at the traveller's right hand, near enough to move with him, near enough to remain when the road changes, near enough that the traveller does not have to reach a destination before entering the care of God. This image corrects one of the most common assumptions about divine presence, that God is waiting at the end of the difficulty. We imagine that peace will begin after the diagnosis changes, after the debt is paid, after the relationship is repaired, after grief becomes manageable, after the child returns, after the answer comes, or after we become the person we think we should be. We place God in the future. Psalm 121 places him at the right hand. Daniel feels the difference on the morning of the contract interview. He sits at the kitchen table wearing a clean shirt and a jacket he has not worn since the previous rejection. His laptop is open. Notes are arranged beside it. The call will begin in 17 minutes. Rachel is at work. Their daughter is at school. The house is quiet. Daniel has prepared carefully. He studied the organization, reviewed the project description, tested the camera, and written questions. Responsibility has done what responsibility can do. Now anxiety begins asking for more. Review everything again. Imagine every question. Find every possible weakness. Prepare for every way they may misunderstand you. Make sure hope does not become visible. He recognizes the old demand: control the outcome before the conversation begins. Daniel closes his notes. He opens Psalm 121 on the table beside him and reads the phrase about shade. At first, he imagines God shielding him from rejection. Then he notices that this is not exactly what the image promises. Shade does not remove the sun from the sky. It changes what the sun is allowed to do to the traveler. The heat remains. The traveler is sustained. Daniel prays, "Be near me in the call, not make them choose me." He still hopes they will. He is allowed to hope. But he begins to separate God's presence from a single result. Keep me truthful. Keep me calm enough to listen. Keep me from believing this decision names my worth. The prayer is smaller than his fear and deeper than his ambition. The interview begins. The manager is kind but direct. She asks about Daniel's experience, the gap in his employment, and a project that did not go as planned. For a moment, shame rises. He is tempted to reshape the story so that failure disappears. Instead, he answers honestly. He explains what happened, what he learned, and what he would do differently. His voice is not perfectly steady. He pauses once to gather his thoughts. The manager does not seem offended by the pause. The call lasts 40 minutes. When it ends, Daniel does not know what she will decide, but he notices something unexpected. He did not abandon himself in the conversation. Fear did not force him to become a performance. He remained present. That too can be shade. We often measure God's help only by external change. Did the door open? Did the pain stop? Did the threat disappear? Those questions matter. Yet there is another category of grace: what God preserves within us while the circumstances remain unresolved. He can preserve honesty when desperation invites compromise. He can preserve gentleness when stress makes harshness easier. He can preserve patience when waiting feels insulting. He can preserve compassion when grief wants to close the heart. He can preserve identity when failure tries to rename us. This kind of protection is easy to overlook because it does not always make the situation look miraculous from the outside. The same sun is still shining, but the traveler has not been destroyed by its heat. Eliab sees a narrow shadow beneath a high rock and signals to the others. The group gathers there, though the space is not large enough for everyone to sit comfortably. People press close. A child drinks from a cup. The older woman closes her eyes. One man removes his sandals and examines a blister. The shade is imperfect. The ground is hard. The air remains warm. The journey is not over. Yet relief moves through the group like a quiet blessing. No one complains that the rock is not a house. They receive what the moment offers. This is one of the spiritual disciplines modern life often resists. Receiving enough without demanding that enough become everything. We want complete resolution. God sometimes gives shade for the next hour. We want certainty for the year. God gives daily bread. We want a life without vulnerability. God gives presence within vulnerability. To call this sufficient is not to deny longing. It is to recognize grace before the final answer arrives. Daniel learns this during the afternoon after the interview. He expects himself to remain calm, but uncertainty grows with each hour. He checks his email twice, then 10 times. He imagines the manager discussing his weaknesses. He remembers sentences he wishes he had phrased differently. At 3 o'clock, Rachel sends a message. "How did it go?" Daniel types, "I don't know." Then he adds, "But I think I was honest." Rachel replies, "That matters." The message is brief. It does not contain a solution. Yet it interrupts the cycle of self-judgment. Later, his daughter comes home carrying a drawing of their family. The figures have oversized heads and tiny hands. Daniel is drawn taller than the house. Above everyone is a large yellow sun. "Why am I so tall?" he asks. "So you can reach things," she says. He laughs. Then he notices that Rachel is drawn beside him, and their daughter is holding both of their hands. The picture contains no job title, no account balance, no evidence of professional success. In the world of the child, Daniel's value is presence. The realization hurts and heals at the same time. He has spent months believing that provision is the only language of love. His daughter has been listening for his laughter. Shade can arrive as a reminder of what fear has made invisible. The psalm continues, "The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night." To modern ears, the language of the moon may sound strange. The ancient traveler lived beneath a sky without artificial light, where night carried physical danger, mystery, and beliefs about unseen influence. The psalm speaks poetically across the whole cycle of experience, day and night, visible and invisible, known danger and imagined danger, the things that burn openly and the things that trouble the mind in darkness. God's care is not scheduled only for the part of life we understand. During the day, Daniel fears what he can name: unemployment, bills, interviews, a child's health. These concerns can be written on paper. At night, the fears become less definite. What if he is becoming someone Rachel no longer recognizes? What if his best years are behind him? What if God is disappointed in him? What if the silence means abandonment? These fears do not fit neatly into a budget or a medical chart. They move like shadows across the mind. Psalm 121 speaks to both kinds of threat. The God who keeps the traveler in daylight is not confused by the darkness. He understands the fear you can explain and the fear you cannot. He sees the wound with a name and the ache beneath language. He is present in the meeting room and in the dream that wakes you afterward. He keeps through the hour when the problem is obvious and through the hour when all you know is that something inside you is not at peace. This does not mean every nighttime thought is spiritually significant. Exhaustion affects the mind. Anxiety can distort perception. The body, the brain, relationships, and circumstances all matter. Seeking sleep, medical care, counseling, and support can be acts of wisdom. God's care is not threatened by the use of ordinary means. The Maker of heaven and earth is also the Maker of bodies that need rest, minds that need healing, and communities that share knowledge. Daniel begins meeting with a counselor recommended by a friend. At first, he is uncomfortable. He worries that needing help proves he lacks faith. The counselor, a thoughtful older woman, asks him about his father, the storm, the job loss, and the role Daniel learned to play in his family. "You became the watchman," she says. Daniel looks down. "And watchmen are useful," she continues, "but they are not meant to be the only people who sleep last and wake first forever." The sentence makes him smile sadly. She does not tell him to stop praying. She helps him see what his prayers have been carrying. This is another form of shade, truth spoken in a room where shame loses some of its power. For some believers, spiritual language has been used to avoid emotional honesty. They were told to pray more when they needed safety, treatment, boundaries, or help. They learned to interpret every struggle as failure of faith. But the God of Psalm 121 is a keeper, not an accuser waiting for tired travelers to collapse. His presence creates space for truth. Grace does not require pretending. Eliab's group leaves the rock after the worst heat has passed. The shadow has moved, reminding them that earthly shelter is temporary. They continue toward a place where the road descends slightly before rising again. As they walk, a young mother begins singing a line of the psalm. Others join quietly. "The Lord is your shade at your right hand." The words do not cool the air physically. They change the meaning of the heat. Suffering often becomes most unbearable when it feels empty. Pain plus abandonment becomes despair. Pain within faithful presence can still be painful, but it is no longer proof that the universe has forgotten you. This is why the Christian story centers not on a God who observed suffering from a safe distance, but on God drawing near. The life of Jesus reveals divine compassion entering hunger, weariness, rejection, grief, and death. Christian hope is not built on the claim that God has never touched pain. It is built on the conviction that pain could not overcome his love or have the final word. Psalm 121 does not explain every mystery of suffering. It prepares the heart to believe that God's nearness can remain true inside mystery. Daniel needs that truth when the contract manager sends an email the following day. She wants to offer him the position. Relief comes so quickly that he has to sit down. The contract is for 4 months, with the possibility of extension. The pay is less than his previous salary, but enough to give the family room to breathe. Daniel calls Rachel, "Ha." She cries. He laughs. Their daughter dances in the kitchen that evening as though a 4-month project were a royal announcement. It would be easy to end the story here and say, "See, God protected him. God answered. Everything worked out." But life is rarely faithful to simple endings. The contract is a gift. Daniel receives it with gratitude. It is not proof that everyone who trusts God will receive employment on the desired timeline. It is not evidence that Daniel's faith earned a reward. It is not the final resolution of his fear. Within the first month, the work becomes demanding. The manager is under pressure. The project is behind schedule. Daniel begins waking early to review tasks. The old watchman instinct returns, now wearing the clothes of dedication. He tells himself he must prove that hiring him was not a mistake. He answers messages late at night. He takes responsibility for problems that are not his alone. He becomes impatient with Rachel when she asks him to stop working. A good gift becomes another place where fear tries to rule. This is why external rescue, though worthy of gratitude, cannot be the deepest meaning of being kept. The job can arrive, and the heart can still become lost inside it. The illness can pass, and fear can still control the house. The relationship can be restored, and old patterns can quietly return. We need more than changed circumstances. We need God to keep the soul within changing circumstances. One night, Daniel notices his daughter's drawing still attached to the refrigerator. He has been working at the table for 3 hours. Rachel is asleep. The house is silent. The tall figure in the picture is holding 2 hands. Daniel closes the laptop. The deadline is real. He will continue in the morning. But tonight, obedience may look like stopping. He walks upstairs, checks on his daughter once, and does not check again. Then he lies beside Rachel and whispers the line, "You are my shade at my right hand." The prayer does not ask God to make him indispensable. It asks God to keep him from being consumed by the need to prove he is. This may be one of the most overlooked forms of divine protection. God guards us not only from what threatens our bodies, but from what threatens to deform our hearts. Success can strike like sun. Failure can trouble like moonlight. Praise can burn, rejection can haunt. Control can become an idol. Fear can become a companion we mistake for wisdom. The keeper remains near enough to expose and heal these things. Eliab reaches the end of the long, exposed path. The land ahead becomes gentler for a time. Olive trees appear in the distance. Their leaves shimmer silver green in the evening breeze. The travelers move toward them with renewed strength. Beneath one tree, Eliab places his hand against the rough trunk. The shade is deeper here. He looks back at the open road and realizes that he crossed it. Not easily, not without thirst, not without depending on others, but he crossed it. Sometimes we only recognize sustaining grace after we reach the edge of a season and look back. How did I continue after the loss? How did I care for them while I was grieving? How did tenderness survive that betrayal? How did I keep praying when the prayer felt empty? How did I wake each morning during the year I thought would destroy me? The answer may not be dramatic. There was shade, a little at a time, near the right hand, enough for the next stretch of road. Yet the psalm is about to make an even larger promise. It speaks of being kept from evil and of one's life being kept by God. These words can sound impossible in a world where faithful people still suffer. Eliab has seen pain on the road. Daniel has not been protected from every disappointment. You may carry losses no simple story can resolve. So what does it mean for God to keep your life? Perhaps the deepest part of you is not the part circumstances can touch most easily. Perhaps the keeper is preserving something the storm cannot take, the sun cannot consume, and even death cannot finally possess. The journey is moving toward its most difficult question and its strongest hope. Before the travelers sleep beneath the olive trees, the older woman who surrendered her bundle sits beside Eliab. She offers him a piece of bread. "You watched me struggle yesterday," she says. Eliab nods. "And today I watched you give your water to the boy." He had forgotten the moment. The child had been thirsty, and the next water source was still ahead. Eliab had simply handed over the cup. The woman smiles. Shade is meant to be shared. Her words reveal another dimension of God's nearness. Those who receive mercy can become shelter for others, not saviors, not perfect protectors, but people through whom the right hand of God feels close. A calm voice can be shade. A patient listener can be shade, a safe home, an honest apology, a meal, a ride to the hospital, a defended reputation, or a refusal to abandon someone in grief can become shade. We do not replace the keeper, we reflect his keeping. Daniel begins to understand this at work. A younger colleague makes an error that delays part of the project. Daniel's first reaction is fear. If the project fails, perhaps the contract will not be extended. He feels the urge to protect himself by making the colleague's fault unmistakable. Then he remembers how much grace he needed after his own failed project years earlier. He addresses the mistake honestly, but without humiliation. Together, they repair what they can. Later, the colleague sends a message. "Thank you for not making me feel like one mistake was the whole story of who I am." Daniel reads the words twice. The shade he received has begun to move through him. This is how divine care often becomes visible in the world. God keeps a frightened heart, then teaches that heart to stand near another person. He provides shelter, then forms shelter givers. He comforts, not so pain will be forgotten, but so comfort will not end with us. Some promises comfort us immediately. Others require us to walk through a difficult question before we can receive them honestly. Psalm 121 says, "The Lord will keep the traveler from evil and keep his life." Those words sound absolute. They sound like walls no suffering can cross. Yet the road itself tells a more complicated story. Near the olive trees, Eliab notices a broken wheel lying beside the path. The wood has split near the center. A few pieces of rope remain attached. There is no cart, no animal, and no owner nearby. Only the wheel and several marks in the dust where something heavy must have been dragged away. The object is ordinary, but it carries a message. Someone's journey did not unfold as planned. Farther along, the group meets a family traveling in the opposite direction. Their steps are slow. The father supports an older man whose face is pale. A woman carries a sleeping child. No one is speaking. The two groups exchange greetings and make space on the road. Eliab watches them pass. The psalm is still on his lips. "The Lord will keep you." But the older man is ill. The wheel is broken. The family's faces carry grief or fear. What does keeping mean here? Any faith that survives only by refusing to see suffering will eventually become cruel. It will blame wounded people for their wounds. It will treat grief as evidence of spiritual failure. It will offer bright sentences when the honest response should be tears. The Bible does not ask us to look away. Its pages contain graves, exile, betrayal, illness, injustice, lament, and unanswered questions. People loved by God walk through fire, prisons, deserts, storms, and loss. Jesus himself weeps beside a tomb. He is not embarrassed by sorrow. So when Psalm 121 speaks of protection, it cannot mean that nothing painful will ever touch a faithful person. The promise must be deeper than comfort. Daniel faces this truth through a phone call from his mother. Her voice sounds smaller than usual. She has been experiencing pain in her side for several weeks. She did not tell him because she knew he was carrying enough. A doctor has ordered further tests. The news enters Daniel's body like cold water. His first thought is practical. When is the appointment? Which doctor? What did the first scan show? Does she need someone to drive her? His second thought is older. Not again. He remembers his father's illness, the months of appointments, the brief improvements, and the final call that changed the shape of every future holiday. His mother is still speaking, but Daniel's mind has already entered a hospital corridor from years ago. Fear does not always predict the future. Sometimes it repeats the past. After the call, Daniel sits in his car outside the office. Rain moves across the windshield in thin lines. He had planned to drive home, but he cannot turn the key. The words of Psalm 121 feel impossible. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. Daniel wants the verse to mean his mother's tests will be clear. He wants it to mean no more hospital rooms, no more waiting, no more graves. He wants God's keeping to be measurable by what does not happen. There is nothing wrong with asking for healing. Scripture invites prayer. Jesus responds to suffering with compassion. Christians have always brought bodies, families, and impossible circumstances before God. Hope can be specific, but faith becomes fragile when God is allowed to be keeper only if the test produces the result we demand. Daniel does not know how to pray without bargaining. "Please let it be nothing," he whispers. Then, after a long silence, "Please." That is all. There are prayers that contain no lesson, no confidence, and no carefully balanced theology. They rise from the place where love and fear meet. God receives them. The test results take several days. During that time, Daniel works, drives his mother to an appointment, answers his daughter's questions, and tries not to read meaning into every expression on the doctor's face. Rachel stays near him without forcing conversation. The contract project continues. Deadlines do not pause because a family is afraid. This ordinary collision can feel almost offensive. Emails arrive while people are waiting for news that may change their lives. Groceries must be purchased. School forms must be signed. The world asks for normal actions from people whose hearts are standing in another room. Eliab sees the same truth on the road. The family with the sick man passes out of view. His group continues toward Jerusalem. The sun rises. Bread is eaten. A child complains about a stone in his sandal. Suffering and ordinary life travel beside each other. The psalm does not remove the mystery. It gives the traveler a center within it. The Hebrew idea of keeping in Psalm 121 is repeated so often that it becomes the pulse of the song. God guards, watches, preserves, attends. The promise gathers the whole journey beneath divine care. But preservation can mean more than maintaining an untouched life. A manuscript can be preserved even if its cover is worn. A flame can be preserved through wind by becoming small. A relationship can be preserved through honest grief, though it can never return to innocence. A soul can be preserved through suffering without pretending it was unharmed. God's keeping is not always the preservation of our preferred form of life. Sometimes it is the preservation of faith, love, identity, and eternal belonging when the outward form changes. This is difficult because we naturally value what can be seen. The body matters. Work matters. Homes, relationships, plans, and safety matter. Christianity does not teach contempt for earthly life. Creation is called good. Jesus heals bodies, feeds hungry people, welcomes children, and cares about concrete need. Yet the Christian story also insists that human life cannot be reduced to what suffering can remove. There is a self known by God, a life held within his love, a name not erased by unemployment, illness, aging, failure, rejection, or death. This is the part fear cannot fully reach. Daniel's mother receives the results in a small consultation room. The doctor explains that the scan found a growth. More testing is needed. It may be treatable. There are reasons for hope, but the road ahead will not be simple. The words arrive in pieces: growth, biopsy, treatment, options. Daniel looks at his mother. She is listening carefully, asking questions in a steady voice. He wonders how she can be calm. In the parking lot, she begins to cry. So does he. There is no music, no sudden light, no dramatic declaration. Only a mother and son sitting in a parked car while rain touches the roof. "I thought I had more time before something like this," Daniel says. His mother reaches for his hand. "We always think time belongs to us," she answers. The sentence is not bitter. It is tired and true. Daniel wants to promise that she will be fine. He cannot. He wants her to promise that she is not afraid. She will not lie. "I am afraid," she says, "but I am not alone." The words do not erase the diagnosis. They create a place to stand inside it. This is the difference between denial and hope. Denial says the difficult thing is not real. Hope says the difficult thing is not the only reality. The diagnosis is real. God is also real. The treatment may be painful. Grace may still be present. The future is uncertain. The keeper has not become uncertain. Daniel's mother asks him to read Psalm 121 at home that evening. He begins, but his voice breaks near the line about keeping life. "I do not understand this," he says. She looks toward the window. "Neither do I. Not completely." "Then how do you trust it?" She thinks for a moment. "When your father was dying, I asked God to keep him. I meant, at first, keep him here, heal him, give us more years." Daniel remains silent. "And I still wish we had those years," she continues. "But near the end, I began to see that your father was not disappearing from God. His body was failing. His life was still held." Daniel looks away. The idea touches the place where grief has remained unfinished. His mother does not romanticize death. She does not call loss beautiful. She speaks with the authority of someone who knows that faith and heartbreak can occupy the same room. "God did not keep us from grieving," she says. "He kept grief from becoming the end of love." The sentence opens something. Daniel has often measured his father's death only by absence, empty chair, missing voice, unasked questions. But love did not end at the funeral. It changed form. It became memory, influence, longing, gratitude, and the hope of resurrection. Grief wounded him. It did not erase the relationship from the care of God. This is not an easy answer. It should not be offered cheaply to someone whose loss is fresh. The Christian hope of eternal life is not a shortcut around mourning. Jesus does not stand outside the tomb of Lazarus and tell everyone that tears are unnecessary. He weeps before he calls the dead man out. Divine hope makes room for human sorrow. Eliab's journey carries him near a small burial place cut into the rock. He sees stones arranged with care. Someone in the group grows quiet. Perhaps a loved one is buried in a place like this. Perhaps every pilgrim carries the names of people who once sang the same songs. Going up to Jerusalem is not only a journey of celebration, it is also a journey of memory. The travelers sing promises while carrying grief. That is how many people worship. They stand in church while remembering the person who once stood beside them. They sing about God's goodness while waiting for medical results. They pray for peace while their minds are crowded. They speak of hope with tears in their eyes. This is not hypocrisy. It may be the purest form of faith, not pretending the wound is absent, but refusing to believe the wound is sovereign. Daniel's mother begins treatment after further testing confirms that the growth is serious but manageable. The weeks become organized around appointments, medication, meals, and changing levels of strength. Daniel's contract allows some flexibility. Rachel adjusts her schedule. Friends bring food. Church members drive his mother when Daniel cannot. A neighbor cares for her garden. No single act feels miraculous. Together, they form a net. Keeping can look like a community refusing to let one person fall alone. Daniel notices that his old instinct returns. He wants to coordinate everything. He creates schedules, makes calls, and keeps notes. These actions are useful, but when someone offers help, he is tempted to say no. His mother stops him. "Let them love us," she says. Receiving care becomes part of the spiritual journey. It is easier for some people to believe that God loves them than to accept a casserole from a neighbor. Divine love feels noble. Human help feels exposing. But the keeper often works through ordinary hands. To reject every hand may be to reject some of the shade he has placed at our right hand. The treatment is not easy. His mother loses energy. Food tastes different. Some days she is hopeful, some days she is angry. She does not become a perfect saint because she is suffering. Grace does not erase personality. One afternoon, she says, "I am tired of everyone asking me to be brave." Daniel answers, "Then do not be brave today." She laughs for the first time in hours. The freedom not to perform courage becomes another form of keeping. God is not preserving an image. He is preserving a person. This distinction matters in Christian communities, where suffering people sometimes feel pressure to become inspiring. Their pain is expected to produce a testimony quickly. Their questions are tolerated only if the ending is already hopeful. But some seasons are not ready to become stories. They are simply days to survive with God. The Psalm's promise can remain true before the lesson becomes visible. Eliab reaches a steep descent where one of the travelers twists an ankle. The injury is not life-threatening, but the man cannot continue at the same pace. The group faces a decision. They can leave several people behind or slow the entire journey. They slow down. Jerusalem does not move farther away because they choose mercy. The destination remains. This is a picture of how God keeps his people, not always by making the weak move faster, but by teaching the community to travel at the speed of love. Modern life rewards speed. Illness resists it. Grief resists it. Healing resists it. Faith often grows in the delays we would never choose. Daniel learns to sit beside his mother without filling the silence. At first, he brings questions, updates, and plans. Later, he simply sits. One evening, she falls asleep in the chair. Daniel watches her breathing, and the old night watch fear rises. He feels the impulse to remain alert, count every movement, and prepare for disaster. Then he remembers the psalm. The keeper is awake. Daniel is present, but he is not alone in his presence. He places a blanket over his mother and sits nearby with his eyes closed. This is not neglect. It is shared rest beneath divine attention. Months pass. The treatment begins to work. The doctors are cautiously encouraged. Daniel's mother is not instantly restored, but strength returns gradually. The family celebrates small things, a better appetite, a walk to the mailbox, laughter during dinner, a week without an unexpected appointment. They do not call every improvement a guarantee. They receive it as grace for the day. Daniel's contract is extended for another 6 months. He is grateful, but the extension no longer feels like proof that his life has value. He has begun to understand that the job is part of his journey, not the keeper of his identity. The deepest change is quiet. Before the crisis, Daniel needed life to become safe before he could believe God was near. Now he is learning that nearness can become the place where fear is carried, even while safety remains incomplete. This is the part of us the storm cannot take. Not a hard inner core of human strength, but a life hidden in the faithful love of God. Our courage may fail, our plans may break, our bodies may weaken, our understanding may remain incomplete, but the Keeper's relationship to us does not depend on the durability of those things. The Apostle Paul would later express a similar hope. Nothing in creation can separate God's people from his love. The language differs, but the heartbeat is the same. The Creator is also the Keeper. What he holds is not easily lost. This does not mean every person automatically feels secure. Trauma, depression, anxiety, and grief can make divine presence difficult to sense. Feeling forsaken is not proof of being forsaken. Clouds can hide the sun without extinguishing it. The Psalms themselves give language to that experience. Some songs celebrate, others ask why God seems far away. Scripture includes both because faith is a relationship honest enough for lament. Psalm 121 is not a command to feel protected every moment. It is a declaration that God's keeping remains when the feeling disappears. Eliab finally sees Jerusalem from a distant rise. The city appears small at first, touched by evening light. A murmur moves through the travelers. Some point, some cry. The child who once asked how many hills remained begins to run until his father calls him back. They have not arrived. There is still road ahead, yet seeing the destination changes the meaning of the distance. Eliab thinks of the broken wheel, the sick traveler, the twisted ankle, the hard sun, and his own near fall. The journey contains danger and mercy together. He begins to understand that the song is not promising a road untouched by pain. It is promising that no part of the road exists outside the attention of God. The Keeper has been present in the steps that felt strong and the steps that trembled. He has been present in the delays. He has been present in the hands that carried burdens. He has been present in the nights when humans slept. He has been present in the shade, and he will be present beyond the city gates. Psalm 121 does not end with arrival, it ends with movement. Going out and coming in, now and forever. The promise expands beyond one pilgrimage, beyond one diagnosis, beyond one job, beyond one night, beyond one lifetime. What if the psalm was never only about surviving a dangerous journey? What if it is about every threshold a human being crosses, from home into uncertainty, from strength into weakness, from one season into another, and finally from this life into the unbroken presence of God? The final part will return to the place where the story began, a dark room, a tired watchman, and the fear that everything depends on staying awake. But morning is coming. And the traveller is about to discover that the God who kept him on the road is not waiting only at the destination bar. He has been present in every departure, every return, and every step in between. On the ridge bar, the travellers stop long enough to breathe bar. No one speaks of conquering the road bar. The journey has stripped that language away bar. They have not mastered the hills bar. They have been carried through them by strength, by community, by mercy, and by a presence larger than any of them could see bar. Eliab places a hand over his heart. It is still beating. His feet are sore. His body bears the dust of the road. He is not untouched. He is kept. Morning does not erase the road behind us. It reveals what the darkness prevented us from seeing. The final day of Eliab's journey begins beneath a sky washed with pale blue. Jerusalem is visible from the rise, though distance still separates the travellers from the city. Light touches the walls and roofs. The sight is quiet at first, almost smaller than expectation. After so many hills, so many turns, and so many imagined versions of arrival, the destination exists as a real place beneath the morning sun. Some travellers begin to sing, others remain silent. The older woman leans on her staff and weeps. The child who asked how many hills remained stands beside his father, suddenly still. The man with the injured ankle adjusts the support wrapped around his foot. No one reaches the view in exactly the same condition in which the journey began. Pilgrimage changes the traveller, not always through dramatic revelation, sometimes through thirst, delay, shared bread, an offered hand, a night of imperfect watchfulness, and a step taken after fear. Eliab looks back. From this height, the road behind him appears like a thin line moving through the hills. He cannot see every place where the group rested. He cannot identify the stone that shifted under his foot. The exposed road beneath the harsh sun has become part of the landscape. Distance has changed the appearance of the danger. It has not changed the truth that it was difficult. This is how memory often works. Years later, people say, "God carried me." And the sentence can sound simple. It was not simple while they were being carried. There were nights they believed would not end. There were mornings when getting out of bed felt like the entire act of faith. There were prayers with no emotion. There were appointments, phone calls, closed doors, arguments, and long silences. There were people who helped and people who disappeared. There were moments when God's presence felt near, and others when only the promise remained. Looking back does not make the pain unreal. It reveals that pain did not become the whole story. Daniel understands this nearly a year after the night of his daughter's fever. The blue clock beside the bed reads 2:17 again. He is awake, but the room is different. His daughter is no longer sick. Rachel is sleeping beside him. His mother has completed treatment and continues to recover, though follow-up appointments remain part of their life. Daniel's contract became a permanent position, not with the security he once imagined necessary, but with work that allows him to contribute and remain present with his family. From the outside, the story might look resolved, but human hearts do not heal according to the neat timing of stories. Daniel is awake because his mother has a scan in the morning. Fear has returned. not with the same force, but with the same voice. What if the illness has returned? What if this season of relief was temporary? What if the next message changes everything? He feels the old impulse to reach for his phone, search for information, and build a wall of attention around the people he loves. For a moment, he is disappointed in himself. After everything he has learned, should he not be beyond this? Then he remembers that faith is not a straight road away from fear. It is the practice of returning to truth, returning to prayer, returning to the keeper. Daniel gets out of bed and walks downstairs. The house is dark. He does not turn on every light. In the kitchen, moonlight rests across the table where he first opened Psalm 121. The Bible is now marked beside the passage. A few lines are underlined. A date is written in the margin. The morning after the fever, the rejection, and the first honest prayer, he reads the Psalms slowly. The hills, the maker, the slipping foot, the sleepless keeper, the shade, the day and night, the life preserved, the going out and coming in, the words have not changed. Daniel has. At first he read the psalm as a man asking God to prevent every feared outcome. Now he reads it as a person learning that no outcome can remove him from divine care. This does not make him indifferent to the scan. He wants good news. He prays for good news. His mother wants good news. Hope is not less spiritual because it has a specific desire. But beneath that desire is a deeper trust. Whatever the report says, God will not begin keeping them tomorrow. He is keeping them now. The final lines of Psalm 121 gather the whole human journey into ordinary movement. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in, leaving and returning, beginning and ending, crossing the threshold into work, entering a hospital, walking into a classroom, opening the door to a difficult conversation, stepping onto an unfamiliar road, returning to a house that no longer feels the same, coming home after success, coming home after failure, going out in youth, coming in with age. The language is simple because most of life is lived in repeated movements. We often wait for God in extraordinary moments and overlook him at the doorway. Yet doors are where trust becomes practical. Before leaving home, we cannot guarantee what will happen outside. When returning, we cannot always bring back what we carried out. Some people leave for an ordinary day and return with news that divides life into before and after. Some leave feeling certain and return confused. Some leave in grief and return with unexpected comfort. Some leave believing they are alone and return having encountered kindness. The keeper is present in both directions. Eliab begins descending toward the city. The road is busier now. More pilgrims appear from other paths. Farmers carry goods. Families call to one another. Dust rises in the morning light. Jerusalem becomes larger with every turn. Eliab had imagined arrival as a single moment when fear would disappear. Instead, he notices new concerns. Where will the group stay? Are the supplies enough? Will the injured traveler manage the final descent? How crowded will the city be? Arrival does not make a human being sovereign. There is always another uncertainty beyond the one just crossed. This is why the final promise extends from this time forth and forever. If God's care ended at the city gate, the traveler would immediately need another source of security. If God kept Daniel only until the job arrived, employment would become his new keeper. If God kept his mother only until treatment ended, Every scan would reopen the question of abandonment. If divine faithfulness were attached only to favorable outcomes, peace would remain hostage to the next event. The psalm frees the believer from that cycle. God's keeping is not rented for a season. It does not expire when circumstances change. It is not renewed by perfect behavior. It is not cancelled by tears. It is not weakened by age. It is not defeated by death. From this time forth and forever, the phrase reaches beyond the horizon of what the traveller can see. Christian hope receives that horizon through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. The God who keeps does not promise merely to make temporary life more comfortable. He promises a love stronger than the grave. The resurrection declares that death, the last enemy and greatest human boundary, does not possess final authority over those held by God. This hope should never be used to make present suffering seem unimportant. Eternity is not an excuse to neglect hunger, injustice, illness, loneliness, or grief. The God who keeps souls also cares for bodies, communities, truth, and mercy. The promise of forever should deepen our love for people now, not make us indifferent to their pain. Because life is kept, life is precious. Because people belong to God, they should not be treated as disposable. Because the keeper is near, his people are called to become near to one another. Because he watches the vulnerable, faith must not look away from them. Psalm 121 creates peace, but not passivity. A traveller who is kept can become a companion. A person who has received shade can offer shade. A heart that no longer needs to be its own savior can finally serve without pretending to control every result. Daniel sees this change in the way he relates to his family. He still plans to. He still checks his mother's appointment schedule. He still works carefully and thinks about the future. Faith has not made him irresponsible, but planning is no longer prayer's replacement. When Rachel offers help, he receives it more often. When his daughter is sick, he follows wise medical guidance without allowing every symptom to become a prophecy. When work becomes demanding, he notices the old need to prove his worth and chooses boundaries before resentment grows. When fear returns, he names it. He has not become fearless. He has become less alone inside fear. That may be one of the truest forms of spiritual growth. We imagine maturity as the disappearance of struggle. Scripture often portrays it as deeper dependence within struggle. The mature believer is not the person who never asks, "Where will my help come from?" It is the person who has learned where to turn with the question. Daniel sits at the kitchen table and prays for his mother's scan. "Let the results be clear." He pauses. "Give the doctors wisdom." Another pause. "Keep her heart. Keep mine. Keep Rachel. Keep our daughter." He breathes slowly. "And when I cannot see what you are doing, keep me from believing you have stopped." The prayer ends without a dramatic feeling. Daniel remains at the table for several minutes. Then he returns upstairs. Before lying down, he checks the time. 2:43 a.m. The old version of himself would have counted the remaining hours and feared the morning. Now he repeats one sentence. "You are awake." He closes his eyes. This is not the end of responsibility. The alarm will ring. He will drive his mother to the appointment. He will ask questions. He will wait beside her. But for the remaining hours of night, Daniel allows himself to be a creature held by the Creator. Rest becomes worship because it acknowledges the difference between the keeper and the kept. Eliab reaches the city gate. The sounds of Jerusalem surround him. Footsteps, greetings, animals, merchants, songs, and the layered noise of many journeys arriving together. He passes beneath the stone entrance and feels the cool shadow for a moment. Going out and coming in, he has crossed the threshold. Perhaps he expects to feel complete. Instead, he feels grateful and tired. That is enough. He turns to help the traveler with the injured ankle. The group enters together. No one is left outside simply because they moved more slowly. The keeper's song has formed a community on the road. This is where Psalm 121 becomes more than private comfort. The God who keeps you also keeps a people. Personal faith and shared responsibility belong together. We are never the ultimate keepers of one another, but we are invited to participate in God's care. We watch with those who are afraid. We carry burdens for those whose strength has weakened. We offer practical help without demanding that pain become inspirational. We remind one another of truth when memory fails. We create spaces where tired people can rest without shame. We refuse to make suffering people prove that their faith is strong. We walk at the speed of love. In doing so, we become signs, not sources, of the keeper's presence. The distinction protects both giver and receiver. The giver is not required to save everyone. The receiver is not required to worship human help. All care flows beneath the greater care of God. Daniel's mother's scan is clear. The family receives the news with relief. They go to a small restaurant after the appointment. His mother orders more food than she can eat. Rachel joins them. Daniel's daughter tells a long story about school while everyone laughs. The moment is beautiful. It is not permanent. Another scan will come, stand. Other difficulties will arrive, stand. Every earthly celebration exists within time, Stan. Daniel no longer needs the moment to become permanent in order to receive it, Stan. He gives thanks for today. This is not resignation, Stan. It is freedom from demanding that a gift become a guarantee. Psalm 121 teaches the traveler to live inside a care that extends beyond every changing day, Stan. Today may bring relief, Stan. Tomorrow may bring challenge, Stan. God's character is not rewritten by the calendar, Stan. The Lord keeps your going out and your coming in. When you leave the familiar, when you return changed, when you understand, when you do not. When faith feels strong, when all you can offer is a tired whisper, when people applaud you, when no one sees your effort, when your hands are full, when loss leaves them empty, from this time forth and forever. The final promise does not ask the viewer to imagine a life without hills. There will be hills. There will be stones that move. There will be nights when human watchmen fail. There will be heat, uncertainty, grief, and thresholds we do not feel ready to cross. But none of these realities has the authority to declare that God has forgotten you. Silence is not proof of absence. Delay is not proof of neglect. Weakness is not proof that faith has failed. Rest is not proof that you have stopped caring. Tears are not proof that hope is gone. The keeper's faithfulness is deeper than your current ability to feel it. Perhaps tonight you are the person beside the glowing clock. Maybe you are waiting for a message. Maybe someone you love is ill. Maybe work has become uncertain. Maybe a relationship is breaking. Maybe you are carrying a mistake no one else knows. Maybe the fear has no clear name. You only know that when the room becomes quiet, Your mind begins to watch every possible road. Psalm 121 does not shame you for being awake. It sits beside you in the darkness. It invites you to lift your eyes, not because the hills are harmless, but because they are not highest. Your help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The God who made the road sees the step you cannot yet take. The God who made the night does not lose you in it. The God who made your body understands its exhaustion. The God who gave you people to love loves them more perfectly than you can. The God who knows every tomorrow is present in this hour. You may still need to make the call. You may still need to ask for help. You may still need to apologize. Create a plan. See a doctor. Speak with a counselor. Set a boundary, or take the next difficult step. Faith does not remove these actions. It removes the impossible demand that through them you must become the ruler of every outcome. Do what love gives you to do, then place what remains into hands that do not tremble. The ancient pilgrim's song ends, but the keeping does not. Eliab disappears into the city among thousands of other ordinary lives. Daniel leaves the restaurant with his family and drives home beneath an evening sky. The hills remain in the distance. The future remains partly hidden. Yet both travelers carry the same truth. God was not only waiting in Jerusalem, He was there when the journey began. He was there beside the unstable stone. He was there during the watch. He was there beneath the harsh sun. He was there in the broken wheel, the shared burden, the hospital room, the honest conversation, the quiet meal, and the return home. The keeper's presence was not the reward at the end. It was the unseen ground beneath every step. Daniel enters his house and pauses at the doorway. His daughter runs ahead. Rachel carries a bag from the restaurant. His mother waves from the car before driving away. Going out and coming in. Ordinary movement. Holy care. That night, Daniel turns off the light. He does not know every challenge the next year will bring. He cannot guarantee that everyone he loves will remain untouched by pain. He cannot hold time in place. But he no longer believes that love requires him to remain awake forever. The room becomes dark. His breathing slows. The house rests beneath a sky filled with stars no human watchman has counted completely. And before sleep comes, one final thought settles over him, not as a command, but as peace. The God who kept me today will still be God tomorrow. So tonight, you can close your eyes, not because nothing could go wrong, but because the God who keeps you will still be awake. The promise does not depend on the volume of your prayer. A whisper can rest inside it. A sigh can rest inside it. Even a night when you have no words can rest inside it. You are not kept because you have finally learned how to feel peaceful. You are kept because the keeper is faithful. Tomorrow, the eyes may fall toward the hills again. Let them rise again. The practice is not failure. It is pilgrimage. Step by step, night by night, departure by return, the song becomes part of the traveler. And long after your own watch has ended, the one who never slumbers will remain, unchanged, attentive, and near. You may forget the song for a season. God will not forget your name. You may lose sight of the road will not leave his sight. You may reach the end of your strength and discover that the end of your strength was never the end of his care. This is the peace Psalm 121 leaves beside the bed. Not certainty about every event, but confidence in the one who remains through them all.